Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for being here tonight. We're here celebrating Morton's 90th birthday, which happened already. And he's promised to shed a few tears, so don't be surprised. Just a couple of short announcements. George Lewis is flying in from the airport. We are hoping that he will be here, but Hunter Ochs is going to do the first reflection, so just to let you know that. And then we'll go pretty much in order from that point on. Okay, so enjoy yourselves, have a wonderful evening, and come up and talk to Mort afterwards.
I won't recognize anything. I mean, I don't have a picture in my head of anything. I mean, I was really young. I mean, even at 7 and 8 years old, you didn't go wandering around. We lived in Boyle Heights, which is, it's still a ghetto in Los Angeles, East Los Angeles. And at that time, there was an enclave of Eastern European Jews. I think we'll find the school first. Wow, my God. I wonder if that's really it. Got barbed wire. I don't remember barbed wire. Well, this is quite an experience. I don't remember this. I don't have a picture of this in my mind, but I'm really overwhelmed because I remember what I did here and how it felt. It was Hebrew school, and I was learning Hebrew, and I remember the chair and the table. We were all sitting at one table, several of us, Ema, and the alphabet, Aleph, Base, Gimel, Daleb. When I first looked at it, I just thought, my whole inside, I just became that little kid suddenly. It's amazing. Anyway, I don't remember enjoying it. I didn't remember understanding why it was there. It was all strange. Of course, I guess everything is strange when you're 4 years old, but I didn't know what they were talking about, but it's amazing. That's it. Oh my God. Ah, okay.
You remember there used to be a gas station right there in the
No,
corner.
I wouldn't remember that.
This was an old strip mall from the 40s, 50s,
But it
and
was,
60s.
but it wasn't. It was this size or bigger.
No, it used to be 2 stories.
Okay.
This is probably the one you're thinking about. All right.
Okay. Thank you so
What's your
much,
name?
Mort.
I'm Victor. Nice to meet you.
Good to meet you.
All right, buddy. Bye-bye.
I'm not positive where we are. I think that was the home of Erwin Binder, who was my little friend. This was sort of across the street. What I remember is a duplex like this one here. You know what? Oh my God. Yeah, so this is definitely, if not the house, it might have been one, a door down, and the house might have been across from it. This is extremely like it, with the back alley that was open at that time, and you could just run through all the backyards. I was told by relatives later that they didn't allow children, so whenever I cried, my mother had to pick me up and carry me out into the street, so they wouldn't hear me crying. we would come down to Soto Street. There was a guy sitting on the sidewalk leaning against a building, and he had a tin can with pencils in it. And my dad kept tugging at me to pull me away from him. I understood from the body language that this was really low on the totem pole of life, this guy. And I looked at him, and I said to myself, he looks happy. He's alive. I said, if being at the bottom is only that, I don't really have anything to worry about. And from that point forward, I have the sense that I never really worried about how to make a living. I would just do my thing, whatever it was, and it would take me to wherever I was going. And eventually, I think it was that moment that led me to the Stoic philosophers, you know, to develop a kind of philosophy around what life is all about. And this was the street.
Sending Mort love and good health on his 80th birthday from his old pal Ramon and dearest wife Judy. We have shared many happy adventures over the years at the SF Tape Music Center and elsewhere. If I was more adept, I would insert samples of various pieces, but this simple message will have to do. With all my love and Judy's, Ramon, recorded by Jonathan.
My name is Rhys Chatham. I was born and raised in Manhattan, and as an adolescent and teenager, went to a conservatory called the Third Street Music School, located, logically enough, on 3rd Street between 1st and 2nd Avenues in Manhattan. There I studied transversal flute with Suzanne Ciani. I had heard of a composer named Edgar Varese, so I asked Miss Ciani if we could work on density 21.5. As it happened, Miss Ciani was a specialist in contemporary music, so she agreed, and this is what sparked my interest in contemporary music. At 3rd Street, we had an excellent music theory department who arranged for us kids in the theory class to be bused to New York University to take a series of courses in electronic music by a composer named Morton Subotnick. This was in the autumn of 1967, and Silver Apples of the Moon had just been released by None Such Records. Portrait of Mr. Subotnick had come out recently in the Sunday New York Times, and I was thrilled to learn that I would be taking classes with him. I ran out to buy the record and wore out the vinyl the way only a teenager can do. It drove my poor parents crazy, hearing me play the same piece over and over again. The course that Morton taught was great. Each week, Morton would focus on a different parameter of music. One week it was frequency, which he demonstrated with the aid of oscillators on his Buchla 100 series synthesizer. The next week, the parameter focus was on duration, so he demonstrated the use in this class of a voltage-controlled gate. After doing things like this over a period of a number of weeks, each of us kids got to compose a 1-minute piece on the Buchla synthesizer. Morton made appointments with each of us and took the time to help us make our pieces, which were recorded to tape and were played at the 3rd Street Music School annual town hall concert. All the parents and music teachers were amazed that these teenagers were making electronic music compositions, because at the time, electronic music was a brand new thing. At least that was the case in the 60s. After the course was over, during a quiet moment, I shyly asked Mr. Subotnick if it would be possible for me to continue composing electronic music at his studio. As it happened, Mort had just started a program called the Composers Workshop, where he invited composers to work on the Buchla, and he kindly took me on as a junior member. I was there each weekend composing on the Buchla, which altered the course of my life and confirmed my path as a composer in all things electronic. So happy birthday, Mort. Thank you for all the joy and happiness that you've brought to my life.
Happy birthday, Mort. You were my teacher many years ago when I was a student at CalArts. You taught me from 1977 to 78. A lot of the students, a lot of my colleagues were seeking you out because of your expertise in electronic music and your pioneering work in that field, while I was doing only instrumental music. But the first lesson with you showed me how good you were with scores and analyzing them and figuring out what the student was doing. You would say things like, decide what is the essence of the piece that you're writing, and then don't let go of it. Carry it out. It's not enough to have an intellectual idea about what you're doing, but you have to bring across your idea to the audience in sound and in time. I was working on a piece for 3 clarinets at that point, inspired no doubt by the fact that you were playing a lot of clarinet those days and were working with the instrument in your own music. When I showed you the score, you said, you were very encouraging, and you said, okay, I see these sounds on your page, but you let go of them too quickly. You have to develop them and make them strong so that the audience will get what's in your mind. So in working on that piece, I developed a lot as a young composer, and working on that particular piece, I think, really put me on the path to developing my compositional voice. Besides music lessons, the fact that you were just there and doing so much, you were such a role model to us students. You were having concerts not only in-house at CalArts, but on the East Coast, the West Coast, and in Europe. And we could see like what was out there through what you were doing. It was great because we got to imagine that we could someday become professionals and do similar things to what you were doing. Happy birthday, Mort, and thank you for many things.
I'm Hunter Ochs. I was Mort's student, and then for well over a decade, the programmer of most of the software titles, the educational titles, and some of the in-concert technology. And I wanted to use a few minutes to add one more title to the list of pioneer of, that is usually it follows Mort Subotnick's name, and that is pioneer of software development. And I don't mean as a coder, even though many of you would probably be surprised by even that skill of his, but in terms of the processes of software development. So we're at CalArts in '93, and Mort was just working on All My Hummingbirds Have Alibis, another pioneering first CD-ROM of music. And was describing, I forget what exactly it was, but something about the person is listening to this, and he stops and says, well, not really listening, they're watching this. Well, they're not really just watching this, they're experiencing it. And that word in hindsight, if any of you are in that industry, it's part of my job title, a user experience designer. That title is so ubiquitous now, but it wasn't then. And if you Google it, Norm Donald coined this term in 1995. But even sort of nailing that to me is very typical Mort, that he just sort of had, with his tremendous expertise and intuition, to sort of nail, well, that's called user experience. And there were years actually where the industry debated, what are we going to call this thing? It's called user experience, and Mort sort of used that term at that point. One process advice that he gave us, and that I've heard he has given to other students too, is as you're working on your piece, just if you're in the studio, bring somebody in from the hallway and just play it for them and observe them. You will probably not even have to ask them how they liked it. You will already sort of feel what works and what doesn't work. And that is sort of because you're getting empathy. Your empathy will allow you to do this. Well, the design thinking process, now taught at all sorts of universities as it relates to software development, well, that starts with empathy. And Mort sort of nailed that, which I don't think it was formally expressed that way. Another part of design thinking is prototyping and testing. And man, did we test those CD-ROMs. Mort would, some very formally, hiring formal educators to test at USC, at schools in Los Angeles, at the University of Arizona, but also very informally. There was a concert at ZKM in Karlsruhe, the Center for Art and Music, and you gave a concert there, but then also asked, hey, we want to set up a little booth. There was a big, the exhibit space, and so for a day, we sat in that booth, and there was a little sign that said, meet Morton Subotnick and try his new CD-ROM, which he was working on then was gestures, where people would be controlling the music by making gestures with the mouse. And Mort would just, talk to them and observe them and come up with seeing them do things that we hadn't really thought about people might be doing with this thing. And then right there on the spot, change it, iterate over it. And one that's, I would argue that's, again, that wasn't done. I actually was sort of off and on in the corporate world, and even in very well-funded software development houses, they were working waterfall still. They were, you spec the software, and then you build it, and you hope for the best. This iterative process, boy, it was so essential to your work that is now completely part of the agile software development process. But it also takes a kind of humility to just sit there and let people mess with your work that I think not that many, or I certainly have met a lot of composers who don't have that. So I felt a little nervous to talk about software development in this crowd of musicians, when I also could have, of course, told over that much close work with Mort, I could also tell dozens and dozens of anecdotes. But I want to tell one where Mort really spoke about sort of an attitude of life that has totally changed my life, and I suspect those of others, which is, he says, if somebody asks me, or if I want to work with them on something, collaborate on something, do something, my first instinct is to say yes. Obviously, sometimes there might be a good reason to say no, and then I'm very firm about saying no, but my intuition, my instinct is always just yes. And that openness to sort of embrace and absorb, but also that confidence to, yeah, I can figure that out, like even if it's an industry that might just be nascent, and clearly you've done that many times over to figure out the new rules of the new thing that was coming around, was unbelievably meaningful to me. Also, when at CalArts, there were definitely other teachers who were much more concerned with the point that you got to sort of protect your own little integrity of your work and finding ways to keep the outside world out of it so it doesn't fuck with it. And yours was sort of the opposite of bring that in, bring it on, and a can-do spirit that comes from it, which is like, well, I'll figure that out. And so that resonated deeply with me. I know from other students that it resonated with them, and I suspect it worked for a lot of other students that I don't know. So that then leaves me with just one more thing that I can't really express in words, and it's just the depth of my gratitude to how much you've coached me in my life about personal stuff, about creative things, about professional things. So huge gratitude. Thank you, Mort, for everything you've done for me and for a bunch of other students, and happy birthday. Thanks. Thank you.
First, I would like to thank the organizers of this event, Joan La Barbara, John King, and Miguel Frasconi, for inviting me to this special event. It is an honor to be present. I first met Mort in 1972 as an incoming student at CalArts. CalArts had just opened, and everything was new and exciting. There were no grades, and students were selected based on their artistic portfolio, so the level of talent was unusual. There was a spirit of interdisciplinarity, and I was taking courses in many other things besides music. Although I was beginning college, I was not coming straight out of high school. I'd been a professional musician and started working at the University of Illinois Experimental Music Studio. In addition, I had already taken Xenakis' short course at Indiana. I'd learned the Fortran programming language and had my own synthesizer. But the Buchla system at CalArts had a distinct sound, as Mort's music so clearly articulates. The Buchla was more than a sound synthesizer. It was an analog computer. You could perform multiplication, division, addition, subtraction, integration, and differentiation. It had multiple clocks, triggers, and envelope followers. You could set up a primary sequencer to control a secondary sequencer probabilistically. You could pass the stochastic output of the secondary sequencer through an attenuverter to scale or invert the probabilities. These probabilistic control functions could control pitch, amplitude, or position in quadraphonic space. I was also working with a digital computer at CalArts to design processes of algorithmic composition. At CalArts, studio time was a big priority. Students and faculty would all negotiate for studio time, and this included Mort. His egalitarian attitude deeply impressed the students. Another point of encounter with Mort came in the 1980s when the Schott Music Vergo label asked me to become a producer of compact discs. For one of these projects, the director of Vergo, Dr. Peter Hansa Strecker, asked me to produce a remix of the 4-channel version of the classic work Touch for stereo CD, as well as a new piece, Jacob's Room, featuring Joan La Barbara. I traveled with Mort to his property in the tiny outpost of Pecos, New Mexico, outside of Santa Fe. We fetched the 4-track master tape of Touch from an outdoor shed. At the same time, I interviewed Mort, which we later published in Computer Music Journal. Then we recorded Jacob's Room at a studio in Los Angeles. Later, Vergo asked me to write the program notes for a new edition of his iconic Silver Apples of the Moon. What stood out to me then and now was Mort's work ethic. As he told me in an interview around this time, quote, "My approach to composition was to go to the studio every day, 6 days a week, 12 hours a day, and simply create. All the works somehow came together through editing and splicing and thinking and then I would have a piece, and that was the year's work. That was the way that Silver Apples of the Moon, The Wild Bull, and Touch were realized, unquote. All Mort's students learned by example. He taught us that the most important thing is to do the work. Thank you for your music, your warmth, and for everything, Mort.
Ralph Grierson would like to say a few words about his piece, which will be on video in the next segment. Here's Ralph.
Thank you, Joan. I, too, am honored to be here and to call Mort my friend. I played a piece of Mort's on a Monday evening concert in the early 60s in Los Angeles. He thinks it was called Serenade. But didn't really meet him except through Silver Apples while I was at USC, which of course transformed many of our lives. But as I became a successful recording musician, I realized that I had to balance the career that paid the bills with what was artistically satisfying. So I arranged to take 6 to 8 weeks off every year. It was rather unknown to do for a studio musician, but I did it. And one time I decided to commission 4 composers to write a piece for me, and Mort was one of them. And I went to his house and to talk to him about the piece. The piece was Liquid Strata, and I'm sorry, there's too much background information for what we're doing, but it's important to me. I found out later that this was an audition. Had I known it was an audition, I probably would have been terrified. As it was, we had a wonderful time, and he wrote Liquid Strata for me, which is one of the first published Ghost pieces. It was originally going to be 15 minutes long, and I was going to have 4 composers on the album. And after a few weeks, Mort called me and said, you know, this piece is turning into be much bigger than we talked about, and I'd like to extend it. It'll be more like 25 or 30 minutes, you know, if that's okay. He says, it won't cost you any more money. And I said, okay, great, because I was having second thoughts about my 4th choice for a composer anyway. So that began what I call my postgraduate education, in that I got to travel with Mort. He took me to colleges where he would present seminars and had me play the piece. We traveled on the planes together, became really good friends. And then after he left LA, he would come back to CalArts to teach, and invariably we would have him over for dinner. We would talk and share stories. And at one time, I told him that during my summer break, I was planning on trying to do something, stretching myself a little bit, in that I had this idea that something magical happens when you get at least 3 musicians. You know, solo music is one thing, duets or something, but when you have 3, it becomes something larger. And I said, I'm thinking of making myself 3 people in stereo and doing a video piece. And it was kind of a reaction to, this was the 80s by now, reaction to music videos of the time where they were clearly all lip-synced. No musicians were ever really playing. And I had a career playing movie soundtracks where the music always had to be cut to fit the picture. So in reaction to that, I said, okay, this is going to be me playing live, and I'm going to cut the picture to fit the music. I didn't know even how to do it, because it was the beginning use of, for me, for SMPTE timecode, and everybody said, no, you can't cut SMPTE timecode. Mort put me together with a graduate student Garth Van Sproul in the video department, not to do the recording because all I did was rent a professional camera, set it up in a spot in my studio. I made a square of 4 synthesizers, a Buchla 400, which of course through Mort I had met Don, a Yamaha CS80, a Rhodes Chroma that had a Mac computer interface for sequencers, a Jupiter 8, which had an arpeggiator, and the Buchla all had different clock things. This was now 3 months before the invention of MIDI. I had the idea that somehow I could hook instruments together. And I managed to do it through a device called the Garfield Dr. Clickbox, which transformed every different clock output of these instruments in such a way that I could in some ways synchronize them a little bit. My technician helped me make a variable speed pedal, which I could control the click speed for all of the various arpeggiator and sequencer. I set up the camera in one room, played for 45 minutes. The next night, moved the camera, played for 45 minutes. Third night, played for 45 minutes. I did this 4 nights. This piece you're seeing is 6 minutes of a 45-minute piece, which was distilled from 4 45-minute evenings over a course of 10 days. The last night, because we could only rent the camera for 10 days, I had to double up and do 2 the last 2 nights. The other thing I want to point out is that this was the beginning of digital effects in video. And Garth Van Sproul, after he was graduating from CalArts, got a job in a post-production facility. And so it was his opportunity to explore and try all these effects, with one exception. Mort told me that I don't think it was his idea, but someone had done it. But he said he'd never been able to do it, and he'd always wanted to do this effect, which involved filling a giant stainless steel bowl with black coffee, setting it on top of a loudspeaker, mounting a video camera directly above it, and then playing the piece so that the coffee vibrated in sync to the music. And that's what you'll see.
the zoo and swim like the polar bears do. Let's go to the zoo and swim like the polar bears do.
Mort, this is Carl Stone beaming in from Tokyo. How are you? Happy birthday and congratulations. 90. My God, what a model you are and what an inspiration. I just hope that if I ever could reach 90, I'll have even half the energy and half the enthusiasm you have. Oh my God. What a inspiration and a mentor you've been all these years. You really are kind of my lodestar, the person that I want to be when I grow up. And I remember when I was at CalArts, how you identified all my weak points and found creative ways to try to fix them. Not only in the classroom, of course, but also you got me that job in the CalArts Music Library. I've talked about that in interviews that I've done about how that really set me on a path that I have stayed on to this day musically. And your wisdom as a teacher, your genius as a composer, these are things that I think so many people appreciate. I wish I could be there in person to give you a hug, but I hope to see you soon. And congratulations again.
Hi, Mort. It's Suzanne Ciani.
Has George arrived? It's your turn, George.
Sorry for being late. Oh, there he is. Hey, Mort, how you doing? And Ralph Grierson, that's incredible. Wow. Well, I don't know what to say about this. I mean, I was going to tell old stories, but I don't really have any. So, yeah, I was a little late because of the airplane and stuff. But I just wanted to take a couple of minutes to honor Mort in a couple of different ways and telling. Oh yeah, now camera working better. And to tell a couple of stories that he knows, but you don't. You know, well, I think the first time I heard your music was in Chicago, in the AACM School of Music. That would have been around 1971. I was 19. And every Saturday at 9 a.m., they would have the composition class taught by Muhal, Richard Abrams. And so he was teaching composition. We'd look at scores, or he'd look over our work from the previous week, or you know, things like that. You know, or sometimes he'd present a prepared lecture. I mean, you know, one thing we didn't do, we never talked about improvisation or didn't play. I mean, it was all about scores and this kind of stuff. So anyway, so one morning Muhal held a listening session, and I said, wow, this is okay. And as you know, you guys know, I guess if you know Muhal's work, you know he's seriously devoted to electronics. And if you listen to his recordings, just right from the beginning, there's always an electronic piece on every recording, at least one or two. So this day, he had us listening to, well, I don't remember now, because I'm getting a bit old myself. It was either The Wild Bull or Silver Apples of the Moon. It was one of those two. Or it might have been both, you know. I mean, it was a good long session. And, you know, what we liked about this was that just what you heard a couple seconds ago when Ralph was playing, you know, it had a rhythm to it, you know. I mean, it was great. It was like, it had a clave or something. It was very Afro-diasporic, and so people could groove with that. And plus it was very rich. It sounded wonderful, and the sounds were great, you know. And you know, Mort's thing is, it was kind of like, after you realize, you know, I tried to make synthesizer music, and I wasn't very good at it, and so I basically bequeathed my synthesizer to Earl Howard and Liz Phillips, who knew what to do with these things, and so and went on to try to do something different. But you know, it was like that movie Bird, right, where the guy hears Charlie Parker and he throws his horn in the river. That's what it was like listening to Mort, you know. Say, I got to find something else to do. So I have a couple more things. Then I got to actually meet him. So I don't have any evidence for this, but you know this part too, and I probably told you this, but maybe even Joan, I didn't tell you about it, but I've always regarded Mort as my kind of personal angel. You've always been kind of my personal angel. I don't have any evidence for it, but you always seem to be around just when I'm in some weird liminal state, like IRCOM in 1980. Somehow, that might have been the first time I actually met you, but I mean, somehow, and over the years, you would either appear, or maybe I was always in a liminal state. You would just appear and say, well, that could be it. But anyway, I think, you know, when I think of Mort, the first word, if you did a, you know, free association or whatever, angel would come to mind for me. So if you want to pursue a creative life, it's good. I think it would be good to study Mort, his example. I mean, there's a lot of reasons why. I mean, first of all, you could get an idea from looking at you've already got this idea. Look what's happening here. You know, you already got this idea in the video with Charlemagne and stuff. You know, you get a good idea of what you could achieve. It still won't be what he achieved, but at least you know a little bit more about what you could do, you know, if you really worked at it and if you had enough time. And sometimes you have to really stick it out, you know. I mean, this guy's like 90 years old. I'm going to talk about that in just a minute. I mean, it won't be quite as much. Look, I'll tell you, this is what Mort is like. Someone got me an opportunity to have a private audience with Georgia O'Keeffe. Now, that was pretty cool. But all she wanted to talk about was the stuff she was learning about ceramics. And she just went on and on about these ceramics. Amazing. And then she'd say things like, so, George, do you know Edgar Varese? I said, well, not personally. But I mean, you know, Mort is like that, right? You know, there's going to be something learning, you're going to find out, and he's constantly learning things. So the last thing I'm going to say is, I'm thinking a few years back, they had a Music for Merce event. I mean, maybe John King remembers where this was, but anyway, it was when the CD came out, and Mort was 77 years old. So that was a while back. I guess we can do the math and so on. So I couldn't believe it, 77, look at this guy. So I thought, well, maybe I'll ask a couple other people around here how old they were. Well, Phil Niblock was 77, you know. Then I asked Christian Wolff, a little younger, also 77, you know. It was lucky sevens. I mean, David Behrman, he was a stripling, 74. I mean, this is how it was. I mean, so lucky 7. But you know, numerologically, going back to that time of the AACM, listening to the Wild Bull, the AACM is a 9, you know, numerology. They made it up so that it would be a number 9 organization. You know, AACM, if you add it up, that adds up to 9. So, and now we come full circle to you, Mort, at 90, you know. So I'm wishing you a super happy birthday, and we're honored to be in your presence, and all the stuff you've done for people, all the ideas well, I'll stop there. Thank you.
Here, the brain is Plato's brain. The brain has made pots and statues, great bulls and little jewels, and crossed the river of death this way and that, incessantly seeking some landing. Now wrapping the body for its long sleep, now laying a penny piece on the eyes, now turning toes scrupulously to the east. In spite of the cries, in spite of the screaming, in spite of the battering at the door, a driving torrent flooded the earth. Oh no, everywhere. Houses went up in smoke. Clouds dropped rain. Planes dropped bombs. In the street below Jacob's room, voices were raised, and Jacob read on. They caught a family hiding in a stable. And hung them in the woods. A man, a woman, their child. And Jacob, reading the Phaedrus, heard knocking at the door, as if a coal dropped. They're still hanging. A man, a woman, still hanging. A man, a woman, their child. Is this God's punishment raining down upon the world, a world up to its neck in blood.
Hi, Mort. It's Suzanne Ciani. Happy birthday. I wanted to reach out and give you congratulations on this milestone of 90 years. I, for one, am really glad that you were born and want to thank you personally for all that you've done, inspiring me throughout my life, inspiring Don Buchla, who then inspired me, and for being there all along the way. I loved running into you in Berlin and places far and wide, and just could not believe your stamina and your passion for what you're doing. You are an inspiration to me, but I hope I can stop before 90. Okay, so happy birthday to you, Mort, and many, many more. Lots of love. Take care.
Happy birthday, Mort. We're so sorry we can't be there today in person, but we're certainly with you in spirit. We love you very much, and we can hardly imagine life without you, especially since you turned out to be such a good matchmaker.
That's right, Mort. And from my side, happy birthday, and thank you so much for these adventures of the last 15 years, all the countries we visited all over the world, especially Uzbekistan. I know you've got many memories from there. So, happy birthday. Thank you for the adventures, and especially thank you for the friendship, Mort.
Happy birthday.
canvas is my
All the performers to the stage, please. Performers to the stage, please. Performers to the stage, please. Now we're going to just wish more. Join us.
Thank you all for being here tonight, and I actually wanted to take the microphone down to Mort so he can say a word or two.
I've never been 90 before. This is what it's like. It's pretty good. I recommend it very highly. Thank you all very much. I really appreciate it. I don't think I want to do another 90, but another 10 wouldn't hurt. Thank you all so much. Thank you.